Welcome to another episode of Community Culture. I am Julia.
I'm Tree.
And we brought on Finch today. We thought he would be the perfect person to talk about rainbow gatherings with.
Hey, guys.
And Finch was actually in the Rainbow Vice documentary, which was a bit of a shit show too. But you know, we've been talking about this in camera for quite a hot minute. So,
but always with people that get to edit it and just put in the most shocking things. So it'll be nice to go through and just give more background to people who only maybe know what they saw on the Garden Commune or Cult, which was like a really quick little Heather Googling it, finding the worst possible articles. And yeah, so.
Are you kidding me? We're not going to talk about shocking things today. This is what this podcast is all about. The world is going to change. We need to fucking act now. Nah, for sure.
I mean,
There's like some really
easy to. It was really easy to find the bad articles because the primary thing that people find when they search for the garden first is the Vice documentary. And the biggest hit piece against the Rainbow Gathering that I've seen in print was also from Vice News in 2014. And so the one search leads to the other easily, in one click.
Yeah. And it deals with kind of the similar kind of problem that the garden does, where it's when you have a decentralized organization, no one person represents it, so the most shocking horrible person can actually end up representing it by or the most shocking thing that happens then represents it,
which also happens with political movements and all movements, which is that the most vocal minority gets to be the poster children, and they get to be the ones people point at and say that's who they are. The loudest people in any political movement, the most angry people, the most visible ones.
Right. Yeah, the extremists.
Are we talking about me right now?
Oh, no, I think I was talking. I'm not naming names. I'm talking about the people that the video camera crews always try to go find immediately at Rainbow because they're colorful and loud and will give them a great front page cover picture. And sometimes it's a game to run and try to intercept the journalists and give them some good information before they make a beeline for the wingnuts and get some really good, if it bleeds, it leads network television content.
Right. You got to be, exciting but informative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be tuned in right now, and this might be even the first time they've even heard about what a rainbow gathering even is. So maybe we can just start there, Finch, and kind of for someone who's totally new to this whole thing, what even is it?
So a rainbow gathering is a free, non-commercial, peaceful assembly, usually on public land, with the purpose of praying for peace, building a village in the woods together, leaving a very little impact on the land, living in community, building community, and then cleaning up after ourselves. Rainbow started a little over 50 years ago with a bunch of Vietnam vets and anti-Vietnam peace activists, as well as a whole bunch of other elements of the American subculture that wanted to find a place where they could be on July the 4th, which is Independence Day in the United States, where the veterans could go focus on peace and try to heal without being distracted by bombs and explosions and fireworks everywhere. And from there, the gathering ended up happening every year and spawning regionals and gatherings across Europe and across the world. And it's become this whole cultural icon and network of people. And every year there's still a giant rainbow gathering in the United States from July 1st through 7th in a national forest. And sometimes tens of thousands of people show up. Lately, maybe between 5,000 and 10,000. And we camp for free as individuals on our public land, which is our right as Americans in the United States, given to us by the First Amendment. And we go camping together and we live together in community, and it's a giant family reunion. And on the 4th of July, there's a giant silent contemplative meditation or prayer for peace, a silence held throughout the whole camp. And at noon, we gather together in the main meadow and touch hands and make a harmony and say a sacred sound together. And children come in and join the circle in a parade. And then we break the silence and all peace breaks loose. And the rest of the day is a celebration of the new hippie new year.
Woohoo!
That's my 90 seconds on the gathering.
That's a great answer. we did like a little piece in Nepal. We were asking different people what is a rainbow gathering, and it's funny how everybody has a different answer. But that was really good. Like, yeah, historical. I actually met Finch at the Taiwan World Gathering, and then I think you met him at the Mexico Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've kind of all just been bouncing around to different rainbows since then.
And that was my first gathering outside the USA, the World Gathering in Taiwan. That was my first international kind of anything. It was great.
Yeah, that one was 100 people.
And one more thing is that the food. The Rainbow Gathering focuses so much on food. We share food with each other. We get food in mass quantities. We cook it over fires in the woods. We have huge circles where we all get together and sometimes sing before we eat and sit in a circle. And sharing food and breaking bread together is like one of the practices of peace that's part of like the daily schedule and routine of the gathering.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part about it. You know, that was the thing about the 4th of July gathering that was so amazing. You know, in these international ones, it's usually just like one kitchen or two kitchens. But at this 4th of July, there's like 20 kitchens or something more than that. And you can just go from in the mountains, you know, you can just hike from one little kitchen to the next. And whoa, is that a plane?
It's a helicopter.
It's a helicopter. Oh my God, it's right above us. It's a military helicopter.
They heard us talking about rainbow.
They finally on to you.
Anyway, yeah, great food.
So the camps at the USA Rainbow Gathering, like camps at a festival or at Burning Man or at another thing, like might be focused on their art project or what kind of music they produce or whatever it is. In the USA Rainbow Gathering, like most of the large organized community camps are based on the food that they make, and they're called kitchens, and they cook several meals a day. And the best way to participate and to volunteer is to help with gathering wood, boiling water, chopping vegetables, making soup, frying things, boiling things. The food is like a focus on like all of the daily tasks all day long at Rainbow.
Right. And that's kind of, I think, like somebody going to their first one could expect like that would probably be their day-to-day experience, or like how to start feeling a part of it is like just go start helping out at the kitchen and it'll all just kind of flow from there.
Right. For me, it's like a really beautiful example of gift economy, which I don't know, it's a lot more fun to live in. And it starts with food, you know, but it's expanded into many things where there's camps that like prioritize providing shelter, and they also provide coffee. And there's camps that even now, because cigarettes were like something of a commodity, that there's people who are going around providing that for free as a gift. So it's really expanding into these whole other things other than just food, which is really cool. It's a whole city.
Right. So the tobacco camp, Nick at Night, started in 1996 and came to its first annual U.S. gathering in 1997 in Oregon, I think. And they are a camp that, as you mentioned, gives out cigarettes and tobacco for free. And one thing is that a lot of the ethos comes from what they saw as all of these kitchens will come with their focalizers, their organizers that have the gear and need volunteer help to help build the stuff. And basically, if you're cheery and kind and charismatic, you can get helpers. Or if you're able to bribe the helpers with like, hey, I'll smoke you out a little bit of weed, or I'll give you cigarettes, or we'll have some delicious food, and like we'll all go build this thing together. You can get people to come help. And so they saw a phenomenon of what they thought of as rich camps and poor camps. The camps that had more resource, that had all of the nice American spirits rolling tobacco, were able to get a whole bunch of willing workers by plying them with their tobacco and their other nice things. And then like when 5 street kids came with a pot and a grate and didn't have anything like to offer, they weren't able to get as enthusiastic volunteers. So Nick at Night said, well, no, that's not right. We're trying to build a classless society here. Everyone should have access to tobacco if they're fiending for it. And so we're going to give cigarettes to everyone and level the playing field. So now if you want to help out a kitchen, you go help out that kitchen. It's not because they have the commodity that you are addicted to. Here, we've got that. Have one for free all day long. And so now for 26, 27 years, they've been giving away free cigarettes to the Rainbow Gathering.
It's pretty awesome. It's cool to see like how kind of like lateral and decentralized it's like remained over the years. And it's cool to see that like people, that's like somewhat intentional. People make sure that, you know, things like that don't become too imbalanced. I feel like other like key things to note is like I think something that really makes Rainbow Gathering unique is like lack of technology. Like it's people for me that was one of the main things. Like going to Taiwan and not picking up my phone for 3 weeks was like super transformative for me. And it's another reason I keep going back is to like switch into that. And it's, you know, in everyday life, it's hard to put down your phone and still like make your way around. But in Rainbow, it's like all your needs are met and you never even need to look at it. You run into anybody you want to see, you get food, you get this or whatever. And so that's a beautiful part about it for me. And then also no alcohol being part of the culture also was really unique for me too. Is like a kind of like a detox and like a way to, I don't know, have like a whole social culture built without alcohol is fun. There is a camp at the U.S. gatherings, but the majority of the gathering is without alcohol.
Yeah, and traditionally at Rainbow, like back in the 80s and the 90s, like a lot of, you know, like hard alcoholics and like bikers and like veterans would come to the gathering, and they would come and try to kick alcohol for like the 1 week of the gathering. And sometimes they'd be there for 6 weeks building seed camp and living in a camp up at the front and drinking themselves to sleep every night. And then like July 1st through 4th, you would see the 8 campers in the gathering, you know, maybe like sneaking off to get their shakes right quietly, but like, or not, and coming in on the 4th of July, you know, as this is their sober time to be with the rest of the family. Like a lot of people that were like, you know, lifelong alcoholics all year round tried to like get straight for 1 week while they were with the family at Rainbow, and it offered a space for that.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful about U.S. gatherings in particular. It's like really tries to offer a space for everybody, which is really special.
Yeah, and also it's also so cool how it started with this collaboration with veterans as well. Like we think even today we forget how much of an influence that had on this like hippie culture, whatever you want to call it, is that like it was all, a lot of it came from people who were in war fighting. And even the way that we shit in Rainbow gatherings was designed, I mean, brought by veterans because they knew how to shit in the woods safely. It's really cool.
Well, sort of. Actually, funny story about the shitters.
Okay, is it not true?
They were dug. No, they were dug by a lot of veterans. But the original reason that we have latrines that are straight out of the Marine Handbook is because one of the co-founders of the Rainbow Gathering, Garrick Beck, grew up in a theater family. His mother and father started the Living Theater in New York, and they were sort of a legendary anarchist political theater group. And they did a play one time in the 60s, I think, maybe the 70s, called The Brig. And The Brig was basically a portrayal of a day in a military prison, in a Marine brig. And so they all got copies of the Marine Handbook, and they would run drills for rehearsals, like 5-6 hours a day. They would drill, and they just like crush themselves into, you know, it was very like method style, like feeling the what you're trying to build, acting. And so for weeks on end, they would just drill as Marines. And so a couple years later, when they were doing hippie campouts and Vortex Festival and the first gathering, Garrick and his friends were like, well, yeah, we know every word of the Marine Handbook at this point. Like, here's how you dig a latrine.
So funny. Wow, that's so funny.
Fuck yeah. There you go. Thanks.
But also, yeah, it was started by a bunch of veterans, and, you know, like, Plunker is one of the other, sort of instrumental driving forces behind the early gatherings, Barry Adams, and Barry Plunker Adams, he came back from, the Vietnam War and went straight to San Francisco in the late 60s, and he made friends with the winos who taught him how to dumpster dive, and he taught some of the hippie community how to do the same things, and he was part of that like kind of squatters dropping out movement in the Haight-Ashbury, with the diggers organizing squat pads and free meals for the kids on the street, and Grateful Dead hosting parties in Golden Gate Park, and all of that scene was like very early seeds of a lot of the people who started a network and become friends and then build the Rainbow Gathering in 1972. And so like we say welcome home at Rainbow, and Burning Man's even borrowed that phrase, welcome home. And the welcome home is because Barry and people like him got home from the Vietnam War after going through hell together, and instead of getting a welcome home, a hero's welcome, or even just a welcome at all, they were spat on and called baby killers and ostracized.
Wow.
Coming home traumatized, and so welcome home was for that. Here's a place where you can be here in peace and in quiet on the 4th of July, and welcome home veterans of foreign wars and anyone else that's struggling to find their way home.
Wow. So that's also like the significance of silence is like the opposite of the fireworks, or like whatever, the opposite of like that trauma.
A lot of people had a lot of views about what the silence was. I think that's one of the strong reasons. But also the silence is because in silence you can pray in a non-sectarian way. You can meditate, or you can pray, or you can contemplate, you can do a ritual, you can do whatever, and you're not kind of impeding on somebody else's ritual. Like if I was to do a really loud religious ritual and be intoning things in religious words, like, and playing music with religious instruments, that would be imposing my ritual on the other people in the gathering. And like, that's fine. There's totally a place for that at the gathering. The purpose is for everyone to express themselves in those ways if they want to. But in the silence, we can all do the thing, our own thing together, and not be stepping on anybody else's toes, right? And like, silence is also really palpable. Like, it's thick. You can cut it with a knife. Like, it's so easy to shatter when one person breaks the silence. But when you get like a good couple of hours even in where you haven't heard any sounds at all from anyone's mouth, like, it just starts getting more and more kind of intense. You're all building something together, and it gets more and more unbelievable that you've managed to build this delicate house of cards for as long as it is, the longer it gets.
And so like there's camps, right? And there's camps that come together for like all a bunch of different values. But there is certainly like a few camps at the 4th of July from all these different religions. I don't know what exactly, but it's kind of cool that it's like this space where all these religions that we all used to love and live together peacefully. It seems like the Rainbow Gathering is one of the only examples of that still working.
Yeah, I mean, I know of Christian camps like Bread of Life and Jesus Camp, Jesus Kitchen, and there's the Jewish camp lineage, which used to be Jerusalem Camp and has been Home Shalom for many years. There's a Baha'i camp, Chai Baha'i, stop by, say hi, get chai, which came out of Camp Baha'i back in the 80s, which was kind of like a really interesting part of Rainbow history. And then there's the Hare Krishnas that come in all kinds of different named camps. There's Krishna Camp and Sundar Camp, and there's been a few others over the years. I have not to this day seen an Islamic camp focus yet.
I was just thinking.
And I haven't seen any Latter-day Saints camps. We were really hoping when we went to Utah that some LDS members would come out and build a camp, but we got a few individual curious, Utahns, but there was no Mormon camp.
That would be awesome.
But they're welcome. All of the religions are welcome to have a camp at the gathering or come as individuals and worship in whatever way.
All right. So obviously we all know what Rainbow Gatherings are, but we went on AI before we started this, and we asked what some questions that AI had, and it was so fun. Like, they actually came up with really, really good questions. It goes, I have many questions about Rainbow Gatherings as they're a fascinating phenomenon. Here are a few things that pique my curiosity. Logistics and organization. How do people find out about and plan for Rainbow Gatherings, as they are intentionally off-grid and decentralized? Which has changed over the years. Now it's way different than it used to be. I'm so fascinated by how it used to be, which you probably know more about than we do.
The way my parents told me the way it used to be was that you would find out at the end of the gathering where it was going to be next year through the grapevine, and then you would hitchhike to that state, and then once you got into that state, across the borderline, you would go to the nearest health food store or yoga studio and start asking around or looking at those bulletin boards where people would put like tacked pieces of paper, and somebody would have put an announcement about where the Rainbow Gathering is. And as you get closer and closer, you find more and more people who know where it is until you find someone that like writes down directions for you. And that's, or if you were more in the know, then you called someone up and they read you the directions and you copied them down and maybe made photocopies and handed them out to your friends. In Oregon, I know that like there are a couple people who used to photocopy the directions and hand them out at the monthly potluck at the beginning of June so that people would know where they were heading. And then there used to be light lines, which there still are, but they're like a little less used, but we're trying to get them more into use. And the light line is like a hotline, a telephone number that you would call for your region. Like if you're in the Southwest region or the Northeast region of the United States, you would have your own light line telephone number, and you would call and you would get a recorded message saying, "Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Light Line. The next regional rainbow gathering in this region is going to be in August 12th through 22nd. Call closer to the time and we'll put directions. Welcome home to the annual rainbow gathering. It's going to be July 1st through 7th in this state. Here are the following directions." And then if people couldn't catch it, sometimes they would have to call over and over again so they could write down the directions and maybe leave a message on the message machine if they were confused. And then the person running the light line would have a whole bunch of phone calls to return all the time. So yeah, that's how it used to be, I think.
Funny. Yeah, it's so like it sounds really beautiful that it would happen that way. And I feel like even now, like, okay, so now it gets posted on like there's rainbowforum.net, but they're not even all on there. But I think that's kind of cool too. Like in a way, it's still kind of decentralized. Like for the Italy gathering, I remember I had to like join a Telegram group, but then they wouldn't post the location in the, like nobody would post it in the group. You had to like add someone on Telegram. Yeah. It's like, it's
like
still,
you go to Rainbow
like,
Forum and it says join this Telegram group. You go to the Telegram group, it says email this email address. You send the email and it automatically sends you the invitation.
Yeah, which like there's no, it's not like it would not send the invitation to like somebody, you know, it's just anyone can get it, but it's like it's funny that it's still a little bit hard. I kind of like that there's like that chase.
I think the little bit hard is not to keep out like any infiltrants, it's to make it just difficult enough that like casual people are turned away.
Right.
You know, it's rainbow sucks, don't come unless you really wanna.
Right.
You really wanna?
It's true. It's kind of like how with the garden, it's like the just show up like turns a lot of people away who feel like they want like somebody to like really guide them and say like you're coming on this day and I'm ready to, you know, or whatever. It's like the people that are like, wait, this is how I'm finding out about the rainbow. This seems weird. Well, I'm not going to go or whatever is like,
I mean,
a natural filter.
I also think that that's an example of like sort of good citizenship within a community, which is that when you do invite your friends or bring somebody in new, you sort of take the responsibility of like holding them by the hand for a little while, walking them around, getting them acclimatized, making sure that they're not just a lost stranger in a strange land, confused at all the weird people around them, using slang words that they don't understand and expecting things of them that they don't know what they're you know? And so I think it's really important, like, bring new cool people into the gathering and also like make sure they have a good time once they get there and show them what's up and how to plug in.
Yeah, and you know, like at the garden, for example, you know, we give tours, we do that thing, but also at rainbow gatherings, there's welcome home. So like, you know, that's like the first camp generally that you would go to, and they would greet you, especially they would be able to tell if you're new, and give you the lowdown.
Yeah, welcome home usually has like a pot of tea or a pot of soup, just some simple warm food in case you arrive in the middle of the night or you're tired from hiking. It's a spot where you take a load off, take your backpack off, meet the people there that are also hanging out and welcoming and getting welcomed. And yeah, people will sort of suss out in the first 5 minutes if you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going, or if you're wide-eyed at your first time and like, hey kid, like here's some friendly advice and, you know, welcome, this is going to be great. Like, you know, sit down and ask me any questions you want. And so, yeah, it's like the little, intro zone where people get to relax and be made to feel whole and welcome and in the right place, ready to move on to the next part of the gathering. And that can take hours. You could find yourself at welcome home, sipping on soup and welcoming more people in and getting to know the guy that was running the camp for like all day and realize you haven't made it into the gathering yet.
And end up sleeping there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question. How does such a large temporary community manage basic needs like sanitation, water, and food without any formal leadership or infrastructure? What do you guys think about that?
AI's got it good.
Attacked. We don't always perfectly manage sanitation and water and infrastructure. Every gathering is different, and some have more people that are skilled in those things and some have less. One of the ways that we try and keep people safe is by falling back on our older wisdom, like what has worked before. And in the USA, like in the 80s, there were some really bad outbreaks of illness. In 1987, there was a Shigella outbreak at the North Carolina gathering. And some people worked with some public officials, some like health service officials, and got some really good systems in place. It's really helpful to use things that are like bite-sized and memeable, so that you can explain to people what the proper thing is to do, because like spreading awareness through thousands of people is the task. And so don't touch your thing to the thing is one of our memes, right? Don't touch your serving spoon to the bowl, don't touch your water bottle to the spout. That way we avoid cross-contamination and getting each other sick. We know that like crushed limestone or ashes will stop flies from being able to burrow into our poop, so we use that over the shitter, and that breaks the shit flies food you cycle. We know that Giardia can lay dormant for like 2 weeks in your gut before it manifests, so just somebody saying I've been drinking the water for 3 days and it's fine isn't good enough. We need to either mass filter our waters or have a filtration system at every camp, or boiling. A lot of camps that have it together have a spout that leads to like a filtered one that's always filtering a collection bucket, and then an unfiltered line that's at full pressure for when you're making coffee or tea or something that's going to boil, so that you don't want to waste your slowly accumulated filtered water. But yeah, we do it by learning from our mistakes. And I've definitely been to some gatherings in other countries where they are fortunate enough to be younger gatherings and not have had to make the same mistakes that taught them the same horrible lessons. And so we always need more people that know how to do water filtration, teaching people how to do water filtration, and more people that know how to do all the things teaching. I need to learn how to do water filtration. That's one of like, it feels like the final bosses of Rainbow. It's such a wizard-like thing. We plumb the forest, we stick a pipe in the ground, and then we have faucets that we can open at various kitchens and having drinkable water, and that's a kind of magic.
Really is.
But yeah, it's all trial and error. The U.S. gathering has had 52 years of trial and error, so we've had time to make a lot of errors and learn from them.
Right. Yeah, I think it's kind of cool how it's like returned to like this primitive state, and then it's like, okay, we're like, dirty in the fact that we're like covered in earth, but like in the ways that it matters, we've like figured it out kind of, or at least in the US ones, it feels like, understanding what is actually like where the sickness actually lies and just avoiding that, and then managing to still live in the wilderness, but not be exposing yourself to like each other's illnesses and stuff like that.
I've definitely seen first-timers from the city doing double takes at just how often they're snapped at to wash their hands before touching things.
Yeah. And then,
like, you're not used to having to wash your hands before touching everything in the kitchen every single time until you go out camping and feeding food more than 20 people. And you got to really get your sanitation together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wish we could figure out the STI problem. It's just such a... Nah, I'm joking. I don't even think there is a problem
at Rainbow, and if you see a job, it's your job, right? If you see an STD problem at Rainbow, seriously, you can make a couple calls to Planned Parenthood and free clinics ahead of the gathering, and they'll probably donate like 5,000 condoms for you to distribute via info and the medical centers, and handing out 500 condoms apiece to self-appointed condom fairies that think it would be fun to go see who's flirting with each other around the fire and embarrass them by throwing condoms in their lap.
And we need like a memeable
totally
catchphrase.
Can see a need, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so sanitation, water, and then food. I guess a lot of it, U.S. food, I don't really even know the majority of it. I guess it's like, okay, so we have...
Well, the Magic Hat's a whole thing.
Magic Hat.
So I guess before saying like all of the alternatives to the Magic Hat is a real entry-level explanation, right? So
right. How do we buy the food?
So we get our food communally at Rainbow. We try and get as good a deal as we can because we got to serve maybe 10,000 people. And so we want to go to the co-ops and the grocery stores, get as good deals as we can. Ask the managers, is there any dented cans, any day-old produce that you can give us for like a super good deal for all of it? I mean, we want hundreds of pounds. And so sometimes people ahead of time of the gathering will make some phone calls to some supermarkets and warehouses and try and make some of those connections. And then at dinner every night, we pass around a hat. And it's a magic hat because we start when it's empty and we have a big parade that follows the hat around singing songs about how it's a magic hat. And by the time the hat makes it around the circle, it's full of money. That's why it's magic. And so everyone contributes what they can, whether it's a penny or $100 bill or a kiss. And by the end of a circle or two circles of singing and dancing and parading, the hat gets taken to the middle of the circle, and anyone who wants to volunteer to help count the money goes to the middle of the circle, and we count the money, we put it in the log books. We have a banking council to decide how much do we want to spend on our next food supply mission. You know, let's say $2,000 or $3,000, depending on what point it is in the gathering, how many people are there. They'll make a judgment call. And then that money gets handed to the main supply volunteers who will go out into town, usually in a school bus, sometimes maybe in a truck, but school bus is best because they want a lot of food, like a lot of food. And so they go there with their thousands of dollars, and then they'll go to all of the places where they think they can get the best bulk deals, the managers that they've called, also maybe hit a farmer's market at the end of the day if the timing works out perfect, but come back with absolutely as much food as they can that's vegan so that everyone in the family can eat it, so that everyone can feel ethically okay about donating money for it. We tend to buy mostly produce. And then that food gets distributed, again, by runners and volunteers from each kitchen. The food gets back to the gathering, and main supply coordinator will divide it into boxes, like for small, medium, and big kitchens, depending on how much the kitchen has the ability to prepare food, if they've got 100 gallons of pot space or not. And then they'll put out on the walkie-talkies, hey, the supply food is here, send your runners to come get your food. And then the kitchens will each send a volunteer up to come, and maybe a couple volunteers to come and lug the food back to their kitchen, and then start cooking it and serving it to the main circle, which is the central like place where we all have dinner. And that's sort of the qualification for getting main supply food, is if you have a kitchen that has it together enough that you can send some food out to the communal dinner and not just be serving from your own campsite, then you can share from the communal food purchase. And that's not the majority of the food at the gathering. I'd say it's like 10 to 20% of the food. Mostly a lot of the kitchens also come in with a lot of food. And some kitchens that are traveling kitchens that Rainbow full time, you know, might peek in some dumpsters and be able to like accumulate hundreds of pounds, maybe even thousands of pounds of good food from the dumpsters on the way in. A lot of kitchens also like aren't travelers year round and have lots of people affiliated with the kitchen that maybe have more resources and like throw together some collective money for kitchen gear each year or for gas to haul the trailer with the goods and buy some food. I know somebody that lives near me that's just started the accumulation game, and he goes to Grocery Outlet and finds like penny cans that they're about to throw out. He just got like 365 cans for $3.65. And when there's people that like both do Rainbow Kitchens and obsess over food prices, you can accumulate a whole garage full of food by the time it's time for like the once a year big gathering and bringing it all to the gathering.
Oh yeah, great answer.
Right, and this obviously like
GPT
depends.
Yeah.
So no, I was just gonna. This obviously depends on which country and fingering as well. You know, like a lot we're talking about the U.S., but you know, in places like Italy, for example, there's more of that like food market kind of vibe, and you know, it all depends on the country and what kind of food you're going to be getting from. Like for us, when we were just in Nepal, we were getting it, I guess, directly from some farms. Really, like as direct as you could pretty much get it, from farm to little village to hiking it up into the mountains, you know. That's another thing about just bringing it in. Sorry?
I think that's how it was in Colombia as well. It was like a 4-hour hike into the jungle, but then we had like a neighbor farmer that was just bringing in big food supplies on horseback and selling it to us right there at the gathering.
Mad.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of my answers are because like I'm a lot more plugged into the infrastructure of the USA gathering, and yeah, all
Right.
of that should have the caveat of like sometimes these things vary quite tremendously in different countries.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, we're talking about a lot about this 4th of July, but there's a gathering. So you might be thinking, oh, 4th of July, that's so far away. But there's a gathering happening always, pretty much somewhere in the world. Right now, it's what, Germany?
Well, sort of. The German gathering turned into our space is only big enough to accommodate 20 or 30 people, and y'all are welcome to come and do a little intentional community gathering with us, but it's not exactly a rainbow gathering.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. But let's see. The New South Wales gathering, though, is about to start in 8 days. On the new moon on January 11th, the New South Wales gathering, which was like postponed last week, they said we can't do this until we like manage to get our talks with the local indigenous people together and get a blessing in a good way, and we haven't been able to do it yet, and we're postponing the gathering. And then like yesterday or the day before, I saw really excited like, it's back on, we got the best blessings, and like we figured our shit out. So New South Wales, January 11th to February 9th.
Wow. So where's New South Wales?
It's in Australia. It's where Sydney is.
Ah, okay. I had no idea. Yeah, I knew it was certainly not Wales because you got the new in there,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
that's wild. Yeah, and you know, like it's an issue not even just to have blessings, but you know, it's coming up more and more internationally where there's, you know, the authorities are having issues with rainbow gatherings. For example, in Spain, they were pretty brutally harassed and were kicked out of that spot. When we were just at the Italian gathering, there was, you know, authorities were having an issue with us there too, saying that they were going to kick us out. They never did. And then when we were just in Nepal, and people were stopped for like 3 days, 1,000 people, something like this, or 300 people stopped and not able to go in. You know, luckily in the US, there's a right to be able to gather, so it's somewhat easier. But yeah,
in the US, there's a right to be able to gather, but I wouldn't say it's somewhat easier because like the US has to deal with like a 36 person federal agent like team of bullies that police us constantly and pull over as many cars as they can on the way in and search them with manufactured dog consent and give them tickets for stuff they don't have, and like they get a budget of over $500,000 every year. Like in the United States, apparently like rainbow gatherings are good business for Department of Agriculture cops. They apply months early, like they get double pay, you know, they get overtime pay, they get triple pay over like the weekend and overtime stuff. And it kind of sucks, the police activity at rainbow gatherings. The Forest Service law enforcement has sort of been at war with the rainbow gathering for half a century, even though we keep winning in court. And that's why they haven't been able to cancel the gathering or stop it from happening. So the best they can do is just try to like chill attendance by intimidating people from coming and getting pulled over and having a dog fake sniff. This year, somebody got they brought their friend's ashes to scatter.
I heard about this.
And they got pulled over, and the cops lied and said that the dog smelled drugs. And then they searched the car and they found the ashes. They tested them and said that they were ketamine. And then they confiscated them and ticketed. Like they literally like desecrated ashes over the stupid. Anyway, other countries have gatherings, the ability to have gatherings on private land because they don't have the same political First Amendment, peaceable assembly like narrative that we do in the USA. So like lots of gatherings are able to happen no problem in other countries because you just have permission from the landowner, and that's that. It is interesting seeing that police repression of rainbow gatherings has seemed to be like visibly on the increase just in the last 5 years that we've been going.
Yeah. Someone that was like, when we were talking to Fabian, he was saying he thinks it's just because like that, like previously when scouting for international gatherings, they would ensure permission from like local authorities like months ahead of time. And that maybe that kind of has been like not passed down in the right way, where people are not really doing that and they're just saying, let's just ask for forgiveness or whatever. And then it's like causing problems when it's actually happening. But I don't know.
I mean, we've always been, like, in the USA, we've always been outlaws, you know, like, getting permission
Right.
from local authorities has never exactly been a part of the process. Sometimes informing local authorities and trying to make maybe, like hospital coordination plans with them and stuff like that, like, that's a thing, but
Mm-hmm,
I don't
mm-hmm.
know. Also, like, it's different whether countries have their own traditions in their own country, like whether it's the Italian national gathering or whether it's like the European gathering or the world gathering, where there's a longer lineage of going to different countries and having the way that you do things. I don't know. Like, I know that the world gathering kind of changed its vocalizer crew like halfway through in a lot of ways. Like, there were a lot of older American rainbows that did every world gathering from like 2000 through 2000 and late. And some people like started getting really enthusiastic and being like, we need to gather more and more. And the old vocalizers were like, look, we're also scouting and doing water for the American Rainbow Gathering. Like, this is really hard on our actual lives. Could we maybe do a world gathering every 18 months or every 2 years so that we have the energy to fully commit to scouting and doing it? And basically Vision Council was like, no, fuck that, we're doing it every year. And so the World Gathering had like a handful of people burn out and drop out a little bit, and a newer, younger crew like started forming the World Family Tribe.
Yeah, it's been popping, and that's where the one that we were just at in the poll was. And speaking about the fact that the police stopped us, we ended up getting a permit. But what's happened now is that the authorities are like, this land is a permanent rainbow gathering land. Come here anytime you want. We'll even keep a top up here because we generated so much money for that area that they're like, just take it. The land, just keep coming here as much as you want.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's always the way. Like, even in the United States, although it's not portrayed that much in the papers, it's like, oh no, they're coming to overwhelm us. And then afterwards, it's like, oh wait, they made us wealthy. Brought a whole bunch of people in, a whole bunch of stuff.
All right, next AI question we have is, how are conflicts and disagreements resolved within the gatherings given the lack of traditional authority structure? Which is kind of interesting, I guess. Like, maybe if people who watch the show and saw the consensus process, like, I would say it's kind of similar to that, of like sitting in a circle for hours and hours and hours talking about the issue. Rarely someone is asked to leave, I feel like, from Rainbow, unless they do something really, really bad. But yeah, I remember a couple times I sat in some conflict resolution circles with you, Finch, over like camp territory stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was like the first time we were going on a little happy little stroll through the woods. Let's go see the sights. Yeah. And then someone comes is like, come here, you gotta sit this council with us. We're having this huge conflict. I want to put my trail past her lodge and she doesn't want my trail to go there. And yeah, this is the whole thing.
It was a great
like
intro
the primary...
to Rainbow.
Yeah, and also a great intro to like the concept where like once you get well known enough or go to Rainbow well enough, you can't walk down the trail for 5 minutes without somebody needing to distract you with this important side thing.
Yeah.
But like I think the important primary objective when we're doing like problem solving with each other is that we're still egalitarian, right? Like, there's nobody that's the boss, and what that means is that there's nobody that's punitive. There's no punching in the face, there's no putting in jail, there's no fining somebody $5,000. Like, that's not how we solve problems. That's a punishment. We try to solve problems by, like, figuring out how to resolve the issue, or at very worst, like, remove the people having the issue far enough apart from each other so that we can like talk to them about how they could live with each other or not live with each other. And so the whole process has a name in Rainbow, and it's called Shantasena. And it comes from Sanskrit. In India, a Sena is like an army or an organized militia, and Shanti is the word for peace. And so, like, the roughly translated and argued about over the decades, translation is peace army or peacekeeper or peace scene. It's most literally peace army, but rainbows don't like the word army. But like, I don't know, like you go to India and the word Sena is a word. It's a Sena is an army. It's a militia. But but it was the term Shanti Sena was coined by Gandhi, and it referred to like a team of peacekeepers that he called for like all across the country to help like quell riots and calm people down in civil craziness, and they were the nonviolent peace force. And one of the things that they would do is they would all wear this one color uniform, and they would march in town en masse, and they would do rumor control. They would go to places where people were afraid to go, and they would get the dirt and come back and tell people the truth about what was going on in the streets rather than the crazy rumor. And that's something that Shantasena and Rainbow does too, because a lot of like escalated problems happen because the telephone game and like rumor control and finding out what's really going on and making sure that people aren't, I'm mad at him because I heard he did a terrible thing. And the terrible thing was actually just misunderstood or misconstrued or through 3 elements down the line.
Right.
So, have you ever like done the thing where somebody was like screaming Shantasena and there was a chaotic scene around?
Yeah, in Taiwan. It wasn't someone got bit by a snake in Taiwan. I don't know if you had left already, I think.
Okay.
But somebody screamed Shanti Sena and we all gathered around, but then we all stayed really quiet, and then somebody did the snake venom sucker and it was a poisonous snake. Like we had to like act really fast, and we were pretty far up in the mountains. But we are able to, I don't know if it was an ambulance called, but he got to the hospital and he survived, and he was really
There
grateful.
was that one brother that had that one car.
Okay, right. So that's probably what it was, and he was driven. I think that there was another time that I remember seeing someone having kind of like an episode, like a psychotic episode, and different people responding, but then it was kind of like maybe this is too many people responding. So I remember I didn't go over because I kind of like observed from far. I was like, I don't want to like crowd this person, you know what I mean? I think that's the only 2 times that I've heard.
Was that the same gathering?
That was in the U.S.
Okay. I was thinking about another thing that happened in Taiwan, but
okay.
But yeah, so basically, like Shantasena is like help. It's what you call when you're calling for help. You call loudly, clearly, if you can, Shantasena, and that's what you call when you need more help than you have available to you at this minute. Because you got bit by a snake and you don't have the snake bite kit, or because you see 2 people that are fist fighting and you don't think that you can stop the fight without somebody else there, or because any number of things, because there's a dog fight, anything that's chaotic that you don't think you can handle yourself. Because step 1 is like, if you can resolve a situation yourself, then do it. Bingo bango, problem solved. But if you need more help, then Shantasena is one of the options. And so you call for help, and the converse of that is if you hear someone else making the call for help, if you hear someone yelling Shantasena, you get as calm as you can first so that you don't join the problem when you get there and freak out, and then you jog over to where the sound is coming from and take a pop on the periphery and see what's going on, and see if you can use your powers of analytical thinking to determine where you might be best useful, whether you're the kind of guy that can throw yourself in the middle of the fist fight and make them not want to hit you, or whether you're the person that can like fast talk, hand them both a cigarette and pull one of them aside and start talking to them because you actually know them and you know what's going on. Even your job might be to like, other people are all running because they heard Shantasena, and you keep them at bay and be like, guys, here's what's going on real quick before you jump in. Right. So it's like a coordinated, improvised de-escalation effort.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome way to describe it. All right. Moving on to culture and values. I like this question a lot. What motivates people from diverse backgrounds to come together at a rainbow gathering? Is it primarily the sense of community, the escape from modern society, or something else entirely? It's like, boom, switch from conflict resolution to that. But,
I mean, you ask 1,000 people why they go to a rainbow gathering, you'll get at least 100 different answers.
Yeah. Why do you go to rainbow gatherings, Tree?
Why do I? Because I love to live in gift economy. It's just a more enjoyable and fun way to live. especially whenever there's no one fucking leaders, you know, in our society, like everyone's telling you what to do, how to be, you know, in a gathering, you can, you know, express yourself for who you are as long as you're not harming others, you know. So it's pretty sexy for that. And just being out in nature, you know, like it's so good for us to be outside. And nowadays, if you want to be outside, you're outside alone. It's like a boring time a little bit. When we used to be outside, you know, it was like we're in community, there was people everywhere. And so like Rainbow offers this way to, you know, be in nature while being super exciting, because you're meeting new people like all the time. Every face that you might see might be a new face you've never saw before, but you're in this completely wilderness environment. And you're not looking at other people like we do in society, where we're all just trying to buy and sell from each other, but we're asking ourselves, how can we give? How can we provide? And that energy that just spreads within you just makes you become like a really beautiful person, you know? I'm not the nicest, greatest person, but at a gathering, you know, I can be one of the best versions of myself. You know?
Julia, why do you go to Rainbow?
I think for me now, like, it's like when I first experienced it, I was like, it was like one of the happiest I ever felt. And I think I still kind of go back, like, chasing that initial, like, euphoria that I felt. And it's definitely like, there's sometimes, I don't know, some of them I really, really get there. Like some of them, like by like week 3, you know, it's like I'm in this like totally different state of mind where I'm like, you know, singing really freely without thinking about it. And I'm like, you know, just, I just feel like I'm in a different state of being. I'm like not thinking as much, and I'm just kind of like talking and being myself and being like a more, like, there's one quote from Heather in the show where she's like, being here, I'm starting to remember like who I am, which is sweet, because it's like, I forget that, like, you know, what we're doing is, it's like, for someone that's never experienced it before, I forget how novel that feeling is. And yeah, I think whenever I'm kind of able to like touch that feeling again is really, really special. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'm too in my head, or sometimes I'm just kind of like going through and hanging out, but sometimes I'm able to really, really let go in a rainbow environment, and it's really special. So yeah, I think I'm always trying to achieve that state. How about you, Finch?
I mean, there's a million reasons, and the fact that there are like any number of reasons I could choose to say why I love going to gatherings, like, should be explanatory. But I started because it was kind of a birthright. Like, my mom and my dad both went to Rainbow. They took me as a baby. My dad took me again as a teenager, and then again as like a young adult at 22 years old. And so like, it was an experience that my family got to share with me, just like the Grateful Dead community has been. And like, I was lucky enough to not rebel against my parents, to actually think that the stuff they were into was super cool, and it's probably the stuff I should be into also. And then once I started coming back on my own as an adult, I came because it's like, it was part of the same timing as like my sort of radical political awakening. I was going to university at UC Santa Cruz. I was learning about poor theater, theater of the oppressed, guerrilla theater. Arab Spring had just happened. Occupy Wall Street was blossoming around me. I was visiting my first info shop on Pacific Avenue, hanging out with the Deadheads and the Street Kids and the Anarchists in downtown Santa Cruz. And like, my dad took me to Rainbow Gathering, which I hadn't been to since I was 16. And I looked around and was like, oh my gosh, like, this is like all of that stuff I'm studying about and reading about, like, in practice, like very practiced, like for decades practiced. And so that just kind of blew my mind. And so like, I started learning about anarchism by going to Rainbow Gatherings, and like learning about how I felt about radical politics rather than just like what platform this party is into or whatever. But like, now we're like 10 years later from there, 13 years later from there. I go to see you. I go there because it's where all of my friends are, and like, they're all in one place at once, and I can go, and it really does feel like the family reunion. It's all of my best friends in the whole world, and we're doing the most cool stuff together, and we get to do it every year, and I know I'm going to see them. And so like that's why I can't quit Rainbow. Like everyone's
Yeah.
there, everyone that I love.
It's pretty cool now. I'm like, wow, how many countries have we been to together? This is nuts. We're just like this crazy travel group that goes to like these remote places of the world for years and years now, and like has all these like, you know, really unique experiences too. That's what I love so much about international ones, is like they take you to like this random little corner of Nepal where and then you gotta like, once you get there, you have like a thing that you got to do. You're like interacting with the local people. You're explaining them what they're doing. You're like, everyone's like performing for them. It's like, it's, you know, I don't know.
And some of the wildest part is those shared wild experiences that you don't necessarily, know that you have with other people. Cause like, guarantee you 5 years down the line, 6 years down the line, you're going to be sitting around a fire with somebody telling a story about something outrageous that happened to you at the gathering 5 years ago. And they're going to be like, yeah, I was there. I was in the periphery. We didn't know each other back then, but I was actually right in the middle of that movie, and here's the rest of the story.
Yes.
That's happened to me a bunch of times.
Yep. Yeah. You're like, yeah, reminisce about something that you didn't even know each other. Yeah, it's so funny. It's pretty awesome. Oh, well, okay. There's a lot more questions, but I really like where we're getting with just the, the AI ended with the dark questions, but we've already talked about government authorities.
What other dark questions you got? Lay me on one.
Okay, well, let's do another nice one first. What are some of the unique traditions and practices that have emerged within the rainbow gathering culture?
What a great question. So, a bunch of years ago, one of my friends found a tiny tent in the dumpster of an REI. It was a display tent. It was like 1/10 size or 1/7 size or something like that. It was like just this big tent. And
my gosh.
They brought it to the Rainbow Gathering and set it up. And then we spent way too many hours building this tiny little camp around that tent with a tiny little road in and a tiny little shit pit and a tiny little A camp. We found some Hot Wheels cars to park haphazardly, and like it just got bigger and bigger, and that was Tiny Camp. And every year since then, Tiny Camp has continued to be a tradition and gotten bigger and bolder and tinier, and has grown to be like hundreds of little action figures and like use of the landscape. This year there was like a giant head with a waterfall running over it. There was like a doll's head. Let's see, I remember like tiny campers using COVID masks as hammocks at the Colorado gathering. There was one gathering that Tiny Camp got raided, probably by dogs, the tiny's natural enemy. But Tiny Camp got raided in the middle of the night at one of the gatherings. I think it was Wisconsin, and they were thrashed. Their camp was completely destroyed, and so Camp Wannaburn accepted the Tiny Camp refugees, and they had a tiny little refugee camp over at Wannaburn, and we put up a sign at info saying like, the Tinies need any donations. Their camp has been totally destroyed. Please bring any tiny equipment over to Camp Wannaburn. And so then the Tinies got rebuilt all for the rest of the gathering over there. Let's see. Another great tradition is Primary Triangle. You didn't know about that?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you tell about your first triangle? Because that was one of our first fun like USA gathering experiences together.
Yeah. Primary Triangle. That was super fun. So we stayed up all night. We visited almost every single camp. And then at sunrise, we people gather and try to make a triangle shape so we like commonly gather in a circle, but the goal is to try to make a triangle. And then
which is hard. It's way hard to make a triangle. Everyone wants to bulge out, step out, and see how they're doing, and then they make it into a circle instantly.
It was like the funniest part about it, because it was like everyone's like screaming at each other, like, you're the point and you're the new backup. And we're all like, okay, try to make a triangle. And then Fat Kids makes coffee and donuts, but they won't give them out until we make the triangle. So that's also why it's like so much pressure. Everyone's like, we gotta make the triangle. And then they gave out coffee and donuts. And I think somebody like ran into the middle riding on someone's back with a piñata. Oh no, someone had a piñata and someone was on someone's back like yeehawing and trying to swing the piñata. And I remember like looking around and just thinking it was like just one of the most bizarre like moments of my life of just like what is going on right now.
Was that Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia was my first nationals.
That was a piñata filled with cigarettes that Nick at Night spent all day and all night rolling and filling the piñata with, and that was Skip from Katua Tribe that was on that person's back swinging the bat, and she's dead now. And she was a really, really, really wonderful rainbow.
Wow, I bet. Yeah, I loved Katua Camp that year. That was. I don't think they've been back since, have they? The Katua Camp.
Well, Katua is the Southeast Rainbow family, and so they always have a solstice gathering for the summer solstice in like Tennessee, Carolinas area or Georgia. And so that when the gathering is in their region, they usually have their gathering at the National Rainbow Gathering, basically. Like, they have their Katua gathering at Seed Camp. And so for them, they're having their regional, and for everyone else, we're building Seed Camp. And it looks the same to most people, but there's definitely a distinction in some people's minds. So Katua usually comes to Nationals, like, if and only if it's in their region. And then they come and do their regional at the site of the gathering. And then, like, half of them leave. And then the rest of them, like, stay to do our gathering with us.
Yeah,
Katua's kind of shy about huge crowds. A lot of them are a little shy about being around thousands of people. I've been to Katua Gathering. It's really beautiful, and it's like 100 to 200 people.
Yeah, that's the size that I really like too, when you kind of just get to know everybody. But Nationals is still really fun. But I think that's why I resonated with Katua also, is because it kind of felt like this mini little family that was like really wholesome within the gathering, which I really liked.
Yeah, my one Katua gathering that wasn't at the annual gathering was when we did a Prism year, when we had gatherings in all four corners of the country because we were just getting off of COVID and trying to have smaller dispersed groups. And so I went to a few gatherings, but I started out with the Katua gathering in the Southeast, and it was really sweet, like wonderful enough that I would consider missing like a week and a half of Seed Camp to go to Katua some year if it was within a day and a half drive of the site.
Yeah, it's so cool, like how, Rainbow being like an open space has allowed people to come together and create community that like goes outside of the rainbow, like for the garden, for example, that started from a rainbow kitchen called Shut Up and Eat It. And then people from that kitchen were like, we should buy land together. And certain individuals focused a lot on that and made it a thing. And now it's the garden, it used to be called Shut Up and Shut Up and Grow It. Right. And then then now it's the garden. So like this has happened. The rainbow is facilitating, so much creation outside of it too, which is really beautiful.
Oh, the lineages are fun too, because like Shut Up and Eat It is also the kitchen that birthed Fat Kid's Kitchen. So I guess in the 90s, a whole bunch of street kids and gutter punks and like a different vibe of people like discovered Rainbow all at once. Like there was this new wave of what we now call the dirty kids entering the Rainbow in the mid 90s. And there was this kitchen called Ghetto Gourmet. And it was like the central dirty kid kitchen. And out of Ghetto Gourmet came a bunch of Rainbows that went on to go do Shut Up and Eat It. And then, there was a small group of kids that basically would sit on the hill behind Shut Up and Eat It and heckle them, and occasionally steal food out of their supply tent to bring up to their camp in the woods and go do it better without telling anyone. And they got called the Fat Kids by the Shut Up and Eat It crew. And then in 2006, they finally actually started the kitchen.
Wow, that's really cool.
And then in 2007, the Shut Up and Eat It crew started buying the land that would end up being Shut Up and Grow It, the garden, in 2008, I think. So that was like a very formative period for Rainbow, like 05 through 08, I guess.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
So we were on tradition. So triangle. We were talking about triangle. Then we got sidetracked with Katua.
Yes.
So the triangle tradition is an ancient 13-year tradition or something like that. Also started at Fat Kids. And it basically is a satire of the big tradition at Rainbow, which is kind of silly that we didn't start with, which is the prayer for peace on the 4th of July. And I described that at the beginning of the podcast a little bit. We're quiet all morning, praying for peace in our own way. We come together in a big circle and we say Om at noon, and the children break the silence. So for Triangle, they had a running joke in 2011-ish when greenhorns, people who'd never been to the Rainbow Gathering, would stumble through the woods asking where to get the good free drugs and stuff like that they'd heard about Rainbow Gathering. And so when they would show up to Fat Kids eventually, they started this joke of telling them, you got to put a triangle on your forehead in Sharpie, and then go find this person and tell them the secret password, and they'll give you the good drugs. And this was just a prank on the person in question, and who got like person after person coming up to them being like, may all your angles equal 180? And he'd have to chase them off again, get out of here, not another one, damn it. And so they had so many people running around with triangles on their foreheads that they decided by July 1st that they should do a triangle cult ritual. So they're like, all right, what if instead of a circle in the main meadow, instead of a main circle, we had a primary triangle? And instead of a big quiet like they do on the 4th of July, what if we had a big noisy? And what if instead of saying Om, we said And so so they stayed up all night making cookies and making donuts and making coffee, and then at the crack of dawn did the parade, the yelling, "It's the gathering, July 1st, and you're missing it! Triangle, Sokotoa, may all your angles equal 180," and any other silly stuff they could think about to yell about triangles, and go through the length of the whole gathering, basically belligerently waking everybody up because the gathering's happening and you shouldn't sleep through it. And then they got everybody still exhausted and silly and giggling over to the meadow and made the triangle and served out the coffee and donuts. And so now every year, the night of June 30th into the morning of July 1st is primary triangle, and we get sillier and sillier, and more kitchens participate and send down their own fancy donuts or coffee or whatever. And that is the most important day of the Rainbow Gathering.
Well, that's the thing. Like, what's so beautiful about this is that, like, it's allowing Rainbow to be able to be a place for so many people. There's so many people who come to the gatherings for that shanty vibe, but also there's not. And creating these alternative, moments allows everyone to feel like it can be their home. But just to say, it's on the full moon as well for international gatherings. It's just pretty much a similar thing of coming together in silence, but on the full moon instead of the 4th.
Right. And one thing that I really appreciate about gatherings outside the USA is that, like, you have a seed camp and then a full month to do the gathering together and then a cleanup. Yeah. And, like, I'm used to doing the gathering for a month in the USA, but that includes seed camp, and that includes the gathering, and that includes a few days after the end of it, Vision Council and cleanup. And so, like, at gatherings in other countries, you really have, like, enough time to get to know people and to, like, work really hard some of the time and play and do workshops a lot of the time and not feel like you're building up towards this week, which, like, is over almost as soon as it started.
Right. Because
that's the thing at the Rainbow is, like, we're building for 3 weeks and we're preparing for this carnival, and then, like, July 1st through 4th is like a whirlwind, and then it's, like, over and we're picking up the pieces.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have mostly informed AI more information about Rainbow Gatherings for its database and tradition.
Oh yeah, we can send them this video.
Yeah,
when it's
this is
finished,
now part of.
Then
that's right, GPT. GPT, if you don't know, now you know.
now when people look up on ChatGPT, like, what are some of the traditions of Rainbow, they're going to just hear about Tiny Camp, Primary Triangle, and these are the traditions of Rainbow.
Hey, look, we could have told him about Goat Camp's tradition.
I know. I was like, that's like level 5 Rainbow. That's like when you're so in it that you need to, like, be against it, and yeah. But I'm sold on Goat Camp though now. Now I'm excited to see a fully operative one at a different gathering because Nepal's was very sad, but
Yeah, I heard it
I
turned into
learned about
pony
Goat
camp.
Camp. Yeah, stampeded by horses constantly. It was just Ryan fighting off horses the whole time.
Okay, wait.
But
So,
cool.
if this thing is going to be aired within the next several days or even couple of weeks, I should maybe talk about like what's coming up in the world of
Okay.
Rainbow for people who are like into knowing what's on the schedule.
All right. So what's next?
And also, there's some other nomadic stuff that's going on for travelers that like to travel money free and stuff like that. So Black Sheep Solstice Gathering just ended, and it was super fun, really cool. And a bunch of people went down to Slab City for New Year's or went to their various concerts for New Year's. But now, as always, in January and February, things are starting to get exciting in Arizona. The international gem shows come to town, and a lot of people either get work there, working for some of the gem booths, or go there to buy, sell, hustle, barter, and trade their own shiny rocks or whatever it is that they sell, whether it's sage or anything. Like when tens of thousands of people come into town with like, so in Arizona, there's a bunch of events happening for rubber tramps and nomads. One of them is the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, and that's going to be in Quartzsite from January 11th to 14th is the women's only Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, and then from the 15th onward through the 19th is for everyone, and that's in Quartzsite. And so anyone that rubber tramps, i.e. travels via vehicle, is welcome to come and sort of join that little caravan out in the desert. And then also in January is Schoolypalooza, which started like a decade ago or so and is a free gathering of school bus owners and schoolie enthusiasts. You don't have to have a school bus to go hang out there, but that is kind of like Bus Village exploded into a whole gathering in the desert. And Schoolypalooza, due to internal politics, is now two kind of simultaneous events. One on private land, still free, near Quartzsite, and that's January 15th through 22nd. And the other one is in Ehrenberg, Arizona, right next to Quartzsite, and that's on public BLM land, and that's from January 19th to 30th. Okay. And then finally, at the end of January, there's going to be a holding camp started on January 25th to prepare for the Arizona Regional Gathering, the Love Gathering. And on January 25th, there's going to be a council to decide the dates of the Love Gathering and to heart song about their visions for the gathering, which leads us to February. There's going to be a regional rainbow gathering in Arizona, somewhere not too far away from Tucson, sometime in the week surrounding Valentine's Day. We started that gathering in 2014, and it's gone consecutively every year since then, even during COVID, which makes it the longest running annual regional in the United States at this point, because it was one of the only ones that had small gatherings during the pandemic. Anyway, so that gathering is going to happen around Valentine's Day. Also, for those in the east side of the country, there's a rainbow gathering in the Ocala National Forest for the first half of February every year. And for those on the Big Island of Hawaii, the Big Island Rainbow Gathering is either going to happen end of January or Valentine's Day. They're counseling about it soon to figure it out. Wait, let me think. Okay, so then in March, there's going to be a Texas camp out for the spring equinox, and that's going to lead to a holding camp for the regional gathering in Oklahoma, where they're going to watch the sun go out on April 8th. There's going to be a total solar eclipse on April 8th. So there's going to be a gathering in Oklahoma right in the path of totality to watch it from. And that gathering is like the first 2 weeks of April. And then after that, people can either head west to go to the New Mexico 420 Earthday gathering, or I'm told they could go east and go to a gathering at the Garden if they're community minded in terms of the commune eco village stuff. Because I've heard that there's going to be a gathering April 12th through 21st over in Lafayette, Tennessee. And then after that, we're at like end of April. Then it's time to just start like figuring out your resources all throughout May to get to the big annual rainbow gathering, which is probably maybe going to be in California. So that's the Rainbow Trail for the next couple of months. I've been obsessing over my calendar for days because it's New Year's.
I always get so excited for your calendar. Is there anything that you want to self-promote through this video, or should we just post your yearly schedule so people can just go hang out with you directly, or what?
I mean, definitely, if you want to link to the schedules, I do want people to come hang out with me because I move around so much that I never get to see anybody unless they are where I'm going. So all of you guys should just come to the next cool thing, and we will all be there together. And it'll be great. World Gathering. I think that we should be promoting awareness that there's going to be a World Rainbow Gathering on the Ivory Coast all of November this year, and that's really exciting. I've never been to Africa, and I'm definitely going. I hope you guys are going.
Hell yeah. Think so. We'll see. I don't know.
We're on the fence. Like when we were there, we were like, yeah, let's go. But I don't know. Like, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We have a lot of life coming up to us, so we'll just figure out just before and roll with it.
We planned Nepal too far in advance, where we were like so expecting it. Like,
right.
Go with
we
it.
had so much expectations and like, and then I ended up just shooting ourselves in the foot.
But all right, if you want to,
I just sort of assume I'm going and make the plans to go without really thinking about it or having any emotional punch until I get off the airplane and I'm in the place. Like literally, I am not able to like contemplate being in another place until I'm there usually.
I know that feeling also.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to hang out with Finch, his entire year schedule will be in the description. And thanks for listening. I hope if people have more questions about Rainbow, you can write in the comments because there's a lot to talk about. But
yeah, and I know Finch likes to answer comments, so
yeah.
You might be down there.
Will this be on YouTube? I'll see you in the YouTube comments.
See you there.
Fuck yeah. Ciao.
Love you, Finch.
Love you guys. All right.